You can buy the best sailboat, the latest gear, and all the right gadgets. But if you don't know how to anchor, none of it matters. Because out here, the difference between a peaceful night and sheer chaos comes down to one thing. Did you set your anchor right? Anchoring. It is an art, a science, and sometimes an exercise in patience. Whether you're a seasoned cruiser or just out for a weekend adventure, knowing how to properly anchor is what separates a peaceful night from waking up halfway across the anchorage wondering how you got there. We've been at this for about 7 years, and knock on wood, we've avoided disaster. And I can tell you, most anchoring problems are preventable. Whether you're anchoring in the Bahamas, dodging coral heads, or setting up in a tight anchorage with a current that wants to throw you a surprise party, there's a method to this madness. And luckily for you, we have spent the last 7 years filming all of it, so you get to learn from both our successes and our mistakes.
Let's try this one more time.
We're gonna cover everything you need to know: anchors, chain, techniques, choosing an anchorage, and of course, what to do when things don't go as planned. Because trust us, at some point, they won't. First things first, picking the right anchor. If you ask 5 sailors what the best anchor is, you're gonna get 6 different answers and probably start a pretty heated debate. The truth, there's no single best anchor. But there is a best anchor for your boat, the type of seabed, and the conditions you're facing. In our 7 years aboard Saoirse, we've anchored in about every type of seabed you can imagine. From thick mud to shifting sands and rocky bottoms, we've learned what works and what doesn't. So when we drop the hook, we want to know it's going to stay put, no matter what Mother Nature throws at us.
Man, this mud is no joke.
Like the time we got slammed by an 80-knot microsquall in the Bahamas. It hit us so fast we barely had time to react. We were too busy saving our solar panels and tackling our mainsail that was flogging itself to death to even think about dragging anchor. If that thing hadn't held, we'd been in for a real mess. Really, the last thing you want in a storm like that is to fight the wind and your anchor at the same time. This is not going to do it any justice, but we are literally being blown sideways. Holy crap! Look at those waves! Yeah. So yes, you'll want to invest in an anchor with a good setting ability, strong holding power, and the ability to reset itself in wind shifts in the middle of the night. Waking up to your boat dragging isn't a fun learning experience. It's a I don't want to talk about it experience. So what should you be using? For most cruisers, a modern scoop style anchor like a mantis, a rocknut, or a spade is your best bet. They dig in deep, they reset fast, and they won't leave you sweating bullets when the wind picks up. And as a general rule of thumb, size up. If recommended size for your boat is 35 pounds, get a 45. You'll definitely sleep better at night. For good measure, we went up 2 sizes, and we have a 55-pound mantis and epsilon anchor on board to hold Saoirse's 13,500-pound displacement hull. To be on the safe side, a full-time cruiser should carry at least 2 anchors, 1 primary and 1 backup, because the time will come when Plan A doesn't work. Now you need to connect that anchor to your boat. Chain is equally as important as your anchor, but what kind of chain should you have? How much of it do you really need? For serious cruising, G4 high test chain is the gold standard. It's stronger than proof coil, meaning it gets the same holding power with less weight. And if you're thinking, but my windlass came with BBB chain, can I mix and match? No. Unfortunately, your windlass gypsy is like a puzzle piece. It is designed for a specific chain size and type. And swapping it out means your windlass won't grip properly. And let me tell you, the last thing you want is to be in an anchorage with a skipping windlass trying to hull up chain by hand with wind and current against you. Now, how much chain do you actually need? If you're a weekend warrior, sticking to marinas, 100 feet might do the job. But for full-time cruising, you want at least 200 to 300 feet of chain, minimum. Why? Well, because you'll never know when you'll need to drop anchor in deeper water.
After, I don't know, 2 or 3 attempts of anchoring inside this bay here, we gave up and came to the outskirts and anchored in 40 feet of water.
Stretch out a longer scope for extra holding power, or reset your anchor after a wind shift. The weight matters too. Too light, and it won't help you absorb shock loads from waves and wind shifts. Too heavy, and your bow turns into a submarine every time you power into a head sea. For most 30 to 40 foot sailboats, 5/16 G4 chain is a solid choice, while heavier boats might go for 3/8. Be sure to keep it inspected and replace it or regalvanize it when needed. It's not a piece of your boat you want to skip out on. There will be times you are thinking you're lucky stars that you had that extra length, like the time when we spent 8 days at sea and finally limped into Grenada during peak cruising season, and the only place to anchor was in 45 feet of water just outside the anchorage. Moral of the story, your chain is what keeps your adventure from turning into a salvage operation. Get the right type, get enough of it, and sleep a whole lot better at night. I know we're talking about anchoring, and sometimes you need extra sleep when you're anchoring. So if you guys have been following my journey, 2025 is my year of sleep. And recently I added the Ultra Human Ring to my repertoire of trying to get my sleep in check. And this guy tells me all sorts of wonderful things. My sleep cycles, my quality of sleep, so much more. And it makes me want to do more things to get better sleep throughout the year. If you guys haven't been following, I have been taking Beam Dream for 7 months now, I think. And this stuff, I know it works, but this shows me that it really does work, because I have had stats to where I've actually forgotten to take it because I've fallen asleep watching a movie and I didn't get up to take it, and my sleep that night was garbage compared to all the other nights that I take it, and it is amazing. And it's so nice to see like scientific evidence that it's working and it's not just in my head. Beam Dream has all natural ingredients. This one is a chocolate peanut butter flavor, which is actually really good. It's probably my second flavor. I still really like the chocolate cocoa batter. But yeah, here's all the ingredients. I'll let you do your own research, but all of these are made to help you go through the sleep cycles, and each ingredient helps you go through each stage. And I get to see which stages I'm in. I like to be in REM a lot. REM stage, REM. Also, another thing I had recently, somebody asked me, well, wait, I can't take it because I don't want to drink a whole cup at night of, you know, a hot chocolate. Well, that's why I've been doing shot glasses. Nice, get it in, be done with it, and it's so yummy. If you guys are struggling with sleep, I know there's a ton of you guys out there because you're reaching out to me. Please give this a go. You can go to the website here or click the QR code here and click or use Beau and Brandy at the checkout as our code, and you can get up to 35% off of Beam Dream. It is so worth it. I wish I could just pass it to you right now and you could take a swig and take a good night's sleep, but we're about to roll into bed and I'm going to have a really good night's sleep. Good night. A good anchorage isn't just about finding a beautiful spot. It's about finding a safe, secure place where you can sleep through the night without waking up to panic, wondering if you're dragging toward disaster. We like to be prepared about what an anchorage is going to be like even before we arrive. So open up that guidebook, jump on Avionics and read reviews, or ask fellow sailors about the anchorage. That is your best defense.
And we are heading into a very shallow entrance. Our friends told us how to get in here, but it's pretty shallow.
But once we arrive, the first thing we look for is depth.
We're at 27 feet.
27.
too deep, and you'll need an absurd amount of chain. Too shallow, and you risk grounding if the tide drops. A quick check on our chart apps like Navionics or OpenCPN can give you a rough idea, but we always verify with our depth sounder when we arrive. It looks so shallow. What are you reading?
1.5.
It looks super shallow here. Then there's the holding ground, which is basically how well the seabed grips your anchor. Not all seabeds are created equal. Sand is the golden standard, offering a strong, reliable hold. Mud can be decent, but might require more scope. While rock and grass, well, let's just say that's where anchors go to misbehave.
It's all rock here,
You want
so we're gonna have to move.
We check satellite imagery on Google Maps before we even drop the hook. Darker patches in clear water often mean grass or rock, while lighter areas are more likely to be sand. Shelter from swell is another must. Swell rolling into an anchorage might not drag you, but it'll toss you around all night like a washing machine, making for a miserable experience. A good anchorage has land or reef blocking the waves. Wind protection is great, but it's not always a deal breaker. Sometimes a well-set anchor and good holding ground matter more than absolute calm, and a nice breeze is always welcomed here in the tropics. Checking the weather forecast, not just for wind direction now, but for what it's going to be overnight, is crucial. We also make sure there's enough room to swing. In an ideal situation, once we drop the anchor, we want to have a full 360 radius to swing around our anchor without heading anything. Remember, other boats swing differently. We've been in anchorages before where every boat is facing different directions, so keeping your eye on your neighbor's boat is just as important as keeping an eye on yours. And just when you thought that was it, you have to worry about other things like hazards and traffic. Are reefs nearby? Are there sunken boats or debris in the anchorage? Are you in the path of a ferry or fishing boats that'll run all hours? We highly recommend knowing as much of this before you arrive to the anchorage. It'll save you time and a huge headache if you need to move for any of the above. We made it. All right, it's go time. You've picked your perfect anchorage, good holding, plenty of swinging room, and no mysterious rocks lurking below, ready to ruin your day. Now, you just have to drop the anchor and make it stick. Simple, right? Well, step 1. You gotta slow down the boat. You're not carpet bombing the seabed, you're gently placing your anchor where it can dig in. Ease the boat to a near stop over your chosen spot, ideally facing into the wind or the current, whichever is stronger.
You wanna just point into the current?
If you have a windlass, now it's time to use it. Lower the anchor slowly to the bottom. Don't just let it free fall out like you're dropping a trapdoor. If you're on manual setup, let it out with a controlled pace. Think graceful ballerina and not a panicked deckhand wrestling an alligator. Step 2. Communicate with the person at the helm. This is a make it or break it moment. Yelling, go, stop, wait, pack up is a guaranteed way to cause confusion and possibly marital crisis. Where do you want to drop? What depth? What depth would you want to drop at? Instead, use your hand signals or headset if you have one. I think we need headsets. Once the anchor is safely on the bottom, you will start to let out chain for a proper scope. We'll talk about more of this in a minute. As you are paying out the chain, the helm should be slowly backing down in reverse, helping the chain lay out in a nice straight line. If you reverse too slow, the chain will most likely just bunch up on itself, or if you go too fast, it'll just pull the anchor along the seabed. So, just right, Goldilocks. Step 3. We stop paying out the chain at a 3-to-1, but keep it in reverse until the anchor is set. That catch?
Yeah, caught good.
Typically, Beau will stand at the bow and watch the anchor chain. If it is thumping up and down, then the anchor is most likely dragging. So he'll let more chain out to compensate. But if it goes taut, he gives me the signal to go into neutral. If the anchor has caught, the boat will align with the chain and the anchor. You may feel a slight jerk forward from the anchor catching. and congratulations, you are now hooked. But there's more. Step 4. Check if you're actually set. There is a difference between thinking you're set and knowing it's set. And the best way, the reverse test.
Alright, give us some hard reverse.
Back down. If your boat moves, your anchor didn't dig in, and you need to try it again. If it holds firm, you're golden. We like to double check by taking a range bearing on a landmark and a spot on the boat. And if our boat stays put, we're all set.
When I'm reversing, I always try to just use this pole and something in the background to make sure that we haven't moved more.
And the final way that you know that you're truly set is to dive the anchor. But before you jump into the water, you need to let out more scope.
Looks good. Nice and dug in.
Scope is the secret sauce of solid anchoring. It's all about getting the right angle between your anchor chain and the seabed. Because if your rode is too vertical, your anchor's got nothing keeping it down, and the next thing you know, you're drifting like a lost balloon. Now, before you drop the anchor, don't just read your depth sounder and think you've got it all figured out. That sensor is probably not at the waterline, and you need to account for the height from the water to your bow roller, right where your anchor rode meets the boat. So here's the real math. Scope is based on vertical distance from the seabed to your bow roller. Let's say you're anchoring in 10 feet of water, and your bow roller is 5 feet above the waterline. That means your total vertical distance is 15 feet. But don't forget about the tide. If it's expected to rise 3 feet, your new depth is 13, making your total vertical distance 18 feet. A minimum of 5-to-1 scope means multiplying that by 5. So you're letting out at least 90 feet of chain. So how much scope do you really need? These are the basic rules that we follow. 5-to-1 for calm anchorages, 7-to-1 for moderate winds, and 10-to-1 if things get spicy. And finally, wind and weather matter. A 5-to-1 scope might be fine if it's calm, but if a front is rolling in with 30 knots of wind, you better be letting out at least 7-to-1, maybe 10-to-1 if you've got the space. Think of your anchor chain like a leash on a wild dog that's jumping up and down. If it's too short, it's going to yank hard and break loose. There's nothing worse than fetch pulling your anchor free. Once the wind and weather clears, pull it back in to a 5-to-1 because too much chain and you're swinging all over the place, making your neighbors nervous. How do you even know how much chain is going out? Unless you have a chain counter on your windlass, you might want to mark the chain with different colors every 25 to 50 feet. People have used spray paint, string, anchor chain markers, whatever you do, this way you're not standing at the bow, squinting into the water, guessing how much you've let out. So you might have been practicing your anchoring skills in a nice, secluded bay, but what happens when you find the perfect spot? Good protection, solid holding, maybe even a killer sunset. Only to realize that every other sailor within 50 miles had the same idea.
We can either anchor here with all these bajillion boats, or we could anchor with like 4 or 5. Yeah.
Now you're staring at a maze of boats packed together like nautical Tetris, with all the different scopes swinging in different directions. Welcome to the Anchoring Olympics. Your mission? Find a safe spot without turning this peaceful anchorage into an episode of Boat Wars. Before you rush in like an over-enthusiastic new cruiser, take a lap. Slow down, circle the anchorage, and observe. How are boats lying? What's their swing pattern? Monohulls, catamarans, and trawlers all behave differently. Just because you fit now doesn't mean you're going to fit later. Where's the wind coming from? Where is it shifting to overnight? Are there hazards, moorings, or shallow spots? And most importantly, where can you anchor without making someone's life miserable? Now, before you drop the hook, have a plan. Figure out your scope first. You need to account for how your boat will settle once the chain stretches out. A good rule of thumb would be, if you're anchoring behind another boat, drop your anchor 1 rode length plus 1 boat length off of their stern, roughly 2 to 3 mast heights as a quick visual reference. By the time your anchor digs in and you settle, you should be just outside of their swing circle. If you're anchoring in front of somebody, you'll need even more space. 2 road links plus 2 boat links ahead to avoid swinging into them.
Hope we don't drag into our friends.
In tight anchorages, a friendly chat goes a long way. A simple, "Hey, I'm thinking about dropping here. How much chain do you have out?" can save everyone a headache. If they say 100 feet and you were planning on 200, that's a red flag. You'll just be swinging in totally different circles. Adjust accordingly. And if they seem grumpy about you anchoring nearby, take the hint. There's always another spot. Keep your VHF radio on in bad weather. If a boat starts dragging toward you, someone might be able to warn you in time. And always make sure your anchor light is on. It's not just for you to find your boat at night, it's for late arrivals and small local boats navigating the anchorage. We even keep a cockpit light on in a busy anchorages for extra visibility. Use an anchor alarm. Apps like Anchor Pro or Navionics will alert you if you start drifting. And never drop anchor immediately and leave the boat. Give it at least an hour to settle. Better yet, dive the anchor and confirm it's well set. You don't want to be that one person everyone's talking about when the wind picks up.
A morning coffee row.
At the end of the day, anchoring in a crowded harbor is about situational awareness, communication, and common sense. Get those right, and you'll be the kind of neighbor people actually want to see again. So the anchor is down, the chain is laid out, and the boat is sitting pretty. But we're not done yet, because now it's time to rig the snubber. This little setup isn't just for show. It's the difference between a peaceful night's sleep and being jolted from a deep sleep by a jarring tension on the anchor chain. What is a snubber? And why do we always use one? A snubber is basically a stretchy piece of 3-strand nylon line that takes a load off your anchor chain load. It attaches to the chain with a chain hook or a rolling hitch like we use, and then cleated off to the bow. The point? It absorbs the shock. Without it, every time the wind shifts or a wave rocks the boat, that tension goes straight into the bow roller and the windlass, making the whole boat jerk around. But with the snubber, the stretch of the line smooths everything out. Less noise, less stress on the deck hardware, and most importantly, less wear on our nerves. Should you always use a snubber? Yes. You could get away without one, maybe, if you enjoy flirting with disaster. When we first started sailing, we didn't even know what a snubber was. A mistake we'd come to regret in West End Bahamas. We dropped anchor in some pretty nasty conditions, and with brutal westerly winds howling through the unprotected anchorage. The boat pitched and yanked against the chain, each wave slamming into us like we owed it money. Our anchor held, a small miracle in of itself, but the strain was too much for our bow roller.
That's pretty. Sorry, YouTube.
We woke up to find it twisted beyond recognition, a casualty of our inexperience. So you're lying in the V-berth, cozy and content, when suddenly your anchor alarm goes off. Or maybe you step outside for a casual look around and realize something's not right. The boats around you are in different spots, or worse, you're the one that's moved.
We have a boat adrift.
If your boat is dragging, you don't have time to sit around scratching your head. You need to act fast. Start the engine, get control, and motor slowly into the wind to relieve pressure on the anchor. If you have room, try letting out more chain. If that doesn't work, bring up the anchor and move upwind and reset it in better holding. Back down hard with the engine to make sure it's set. And if you're dragging toward another boat, give them a heads up. Anchoring isn't just about dropping a chunk of metal and hoping for the best. It is an art, a skill, and sometimes a battle between you, the wind, and the sea. When done right, it gives you the freedom to explore, to find untouched coves and quiet bays, to wake up with nothing but open water and sound of the breeze. It's the difference between a restless night and kind of a sleep where the boat becomes an extension of you, holding steady no matter what the elements throw your way. But anchoring is more than just technique, it's awareness. It's reading the water, understanding the way your boat moves, and respecting the space around you. It's knowing what works in one anchorage might fail for another. The tides will shift, the wind will rise, the conditions will change. And if you don't stay ahead of it, if you don't take the time to do it right, you will learn quickly that the sea has no patience for wishful thinking. Still, when you master it, when you drop the hook with confidence, knowing you're safe, secure, and exactly where you need to be, there is no better feeling. It's a quiet kind of victory, one that doesn't need applause. Just you, the boat, and the knowledge that you have earned your place in this floating world. Because out here, trust isn't just in your anchor. It's in yourself, in your decisions, and the experience you gain with every drop and every set. So take the time, learn the lessons, pay attention to the details, because anchoring isn't just about staying put. It's about knowing that no matter where the journey takes you, you have the skill to hold your ground. And that's the real freedom. A huge thank you to all of our patrons for making these adventures possible. Your support means the absolute world to us, and we love sharing the behind the scenes, live calls, and all the extra moments with you. If you want to be a part of it, get a deeper look into our life on the water, or just support what we do, check out our Patreon. We would love to have you on board.